Hey everyone, this is Sky. I've actually gotten a lot of requests to do either a video or draw up plans. It's concerning my wooden dummy that I call Woody. That's featured in a lot of my videos that I use for training. I would do a step-by-step video on how I constructed it and what it's made of, things like that. So here goes. So this is Woody, the wooden dummy without arms. So basically, this is just to replace my old platform that I used to have, shown here. So as you can see, there's a major difference on the design. So basically, I just wanted something that had a upright pillar and specific striking points. That way, I can improve my technique better than just hitting a heavy bag. I think a heavy bag is just more for, for me to practice my power shots and stuff like that on. And it gives me a little bit more freedom to do things like roundhouses and, things like that. But with this, though, this is more precise. Obviously, it's more anatomically correct, so you have a target to hit, so you can hit the face, the throat, the chest, the stomach, or the groin down below. And then there's also a spot, of course, for like knee strikes and shin strikes or whatever. This is just basically something like a wall bag and also a wooden dummy like in Wing Chun, except it doesn't have any arms coming out of it, obviously. But it serves a specific purpose. So with that being said, I'll start showing you the mechanics of it. Okay, so here you have the base, which obviously anchors everything down to the ground. I have it designed as a platform so that I can put weights and stuff like that on there as a ballast. Without that, this thing would be flopping all over the place. So yeah, you could probably bolt it down somehow if you had some place to do that in, but I just prefer to use some kind of weights. As you can see, I just filled a pail full of stones and stuff like that. It's the only thing I could think of. I couldn't afford to buy like regular weights and from like what you have in a gym, like the big plates. That might be something I'll do. I'll probably collect, some 35 pounders or something like that, and then I will kind of make a way to mount it on this platform. So starting from the back end, as you can see, the mounting place, it was just two simple brackets holding a steel square piece of metal stock, and then it goes into a sleeved kind of thing that's similar to that, except it has all those holes and everything. You can get all of these parts basically from the hardware store, any hardware store. They're pretty common stuff, especially like the big box ones, wherever you are. But it's just nuts, bolts, and just accessories. As you can see, it goes all the way up to the back of this pillar and bolts right in there, and it all pivots, of course. And then I've used some grease on there so this thing can actually slide back and forth, and it worked really smooth. Plus those little holes in there makes it easier to grease it, all the way up. They're about 3 foot lengths. That's what they come in, or something close to that. Okay, next, obviously on the framework itself, it's just 2x4s. There's 2 outboard, obviously, and then there's 2 inboard, which sits on, actually I lied. There's 1 dead center. As you can see, that's the pivot point where the pillar comes out. So it's an actual 3 vertical and then 2 support legs that come out towards the end. As you can see, the original mounting place for this used to be here, but the force was too big or too great and it snapped right out. So I moved it towards the center of the pivot, which actually works much better. So, but yeah, it's just planked on top of the studs that are underneath. And then you have the main pillar, which goes all the way up there. I think I measured it to around 7 feet, but you can adjust it to whatever height you're at or want to practice at. As you can see, it's just 2 sets of 2x4s that is sandwiched in between with another piece of 2x4, kind of like just in house construction. So basically, it's just 2 long 2x4s with a bunch of small ones in between to give it structure, but not also be heavy. That's why you have those hollow spaces in there. It is heavy though, especially when you start striking on it. You can feel the weight of the 2x4s. Here you have a just regular 1x8, I think it is. That mounts up front so that you can actually screw in the pads in place. That's just basically simple. So those are basically the main structure of the whole thing. It's really simple. That's a no-brainer actually. So that's just the main support structure. Now, as far as controlling the swing, you have this one in the rear side. I just have that bungee cord just to take up slack whenever it comes back. As you can see, the chain slacks, and that bungee cord just holds it better in place instead of having that chain flap around. This is an extra heavy duty, kind of spring you would see like on your storm doors, except it's really big, as you can see with my hand. I have one straight in the back. Then I have the one up front, which I have to make some adjustments. As you can see, this is a little bit loose. I just want the slack taken out, but I'm gonna have to modify this, which is the simulated knee and knee or shins. I'm just going to get a shorter length of pipe, bring this up so that I can move this eye bolt up a little bit further to tighten, make that tension a little bit tighter. And then on the sides, you have like the side stabilizer, kind of like the sails on a ship, that holds the mast up. And all this is connected with just basic kind of hardware, eye bolts, little eye pads or whatever you call those, and turnbuckles for adjustment. And then these springs are what takes up some of the slack, but as well as gives it some additional force to hold the mast, to be able to control the force that's being put on it going forward. But as you can see, the sides are almost pretty much vertical with the mast, because moving it anywhere forward, the force on those springs actually snapped my first set of springs. So yeah, there's a lot of force that goes on when you're kicking these things. And of course, this is just kind of for safety because of the edges here, so I just wrap that around in case I missed. Same thing for the throat area. I don't use this for actually using with my fists. I more or less do a chopping or a jutting kind of action for the throat. Because if I ever hit anybody's throat, it's either going to be with that or a hammer fist, which is not something I really want to do, but hey, whatever, I practice it. So those are the main structures. So the whole idea of the springs is just to control its swaying motion forward and backwards. But as you can see, it's pretty simple the way I have it mounted. You can change it to any way you want to if it works any better. With this part here, you don't need it necessarily if you're just going to use it for you don't believe in knee strikes or whatever, then you don't need to put it there obviously. But I like to do a lot of that because I think it's effective. Plus it helps strengthen your foot. You can kick harder because that's really solid, so you got to be careful and not break your foot. As far as the pads, they're backed by just some scrap 1x8s I think I had. And then underneath is going to be like foam padding, but it's a really hard foam padding. Generally, I took like some floor matting from, as a matter of fact, I'll show you. This stuff from the hardware store. It's just matting for, like, your garage or something so that you can work on it. But it's soft, but it's also pretty stiff stuff. But I've got it layered 3 deep. I did a special contour with like the face and the chest. Well, actually all of it. They all have slight contours to them. And then of course I used the marine vinyl from the fabric store and stretched it over once everything. Oh, each layer of foam rubber is got a rubbery glue to hold it together as I was constructing it. And then I took the marine vinyl fabric and stretched it over and started stapling the crap out of it, as you can see. And I did it to all these pieces. And then once I did that, I went to the back, and once I got the positions, as you can see, the screws, I just screwed it in with some wood screws. Obviously you don't want to make them too long, because if you punch through, which I don't think will ever happen, whoops. I don't want to contact the sharp point of the screw on the other side. But whatever method you use, whatever hardware you use, is up to you. But I think that's it in a nutshell. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's just all mechanical, I guess. But I mean, one thing I do want to explain is the fact that it's not a stationary object per se. When you kick it, it moves back. Just like a real person would move back if you tried kicking them or whatever, to an extent. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's better than just something that's just sitting there. And that's the one thing I do like about the heavy bag. My heavy bag, the light heavy bag. Without it being anchored, as you're punching it, it basically will move around. And then you can adjust to that, kind of like if you're, chasing somebody while you're trying to hit them, obviously. So, with that being said, this does have enough movement to go back and forth, and as you can see this front spring working. And then it won't go forward anymore because this stops it and kind of acts like a shock absorber. So that's pretty much it. It's a simple thing. You just have to have a lot of time to do it and, the motivation. But it's worth it. I mean, it's 100% worth it. It's part of my arsenal of stuff that I'm going to use for training. So.